Have you ever noticed that if someone gives you a compliment about something, you're more likely to want to do that thing? For example, let's say I said you were good at cooking. You're more likely to want to cook for me to live up to the expectation that I've set for you, and you probably will be a better cook as a result. The same is true for running. If people think you're a good runner, and you believe it, you probably will be a better runner. Psychology in running is just as important as any physical metric, if not more important. That includes training, diet, whatever. I know that's a bold claim, but stick with me and I'll explain why. In running, what you feel you can do is actually way more important than what you can physically do. The reason for that is what you can physically do is way more than what you feel you can do. And the reason for that is your brain is always holding you back. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to stop you from going too fast in a race or whatever and doing some damage to yourself. So that's why psychology is so important, because psychology is essentially the tool that's going to help us bridge the gap between what we physically can do and what our brain's going to let us do. So for example, let's say we ran a marathon in 3 hours, which is a very respectable, great time. We physically could probably run that in 2:50, 2:45, but our brain will not let us do that because our brain is scared. Our brain's scared that we're going to do some damage. So we need techniques and tools that are going to bridge that gap and get us the extra 15 minutes in the race. These tools include things like listening to music or drinking caffeine, both of which make you feel like you can go faster with less effort. And another tool, which we're going to talk about in this video, which is the power of ego. So we're just going to go out and I'm going to illustrate that with a little story. That's not the best look. Before we get into the story, I just want to say we're going to talk a lot about the theory of ego and using it as a tool in psychology. But at the end of the video, there'll be some very tangible, practical tips that you can use to leverage that tool to increase your race performance and the quality of your training. So make sure to stick around for that. So, story. So earlier this year, I was running a half marathon in Richmond Park. A few good runners there, 2 ahead of me who I just couldn't catch, but there's pretty much no one behind. So I was settled and guaranteed 3rd place. I was running along at this 4-lap course and, you know, going pretty well. Every time I was approaching the finish line on each of the laps, there was this random group of strangers who absolutely erupted into cheer every time I passed. It was such a surreal experience, and it was such a little motivation boost. I loved that. And so that gave me a little, you know, kind of spurred me on a little bit. Coming around to the last lap, and I was still in 3rd place, which was great, but I was kind of lagging behind. The fatigue was hitting in. I'd already set a PB, but I wasn't on track for the 120, the sub 120, unless I picked up the pace. As I went past this group, they all screamed again, and that was a big motivational boost. But then I heard one of them whisper, "That is insane." Exactly like that. And like, I don't know if they were talking about me, a fucking bird in the distance, anything, my ridiculous form, anything. Could have been talking about absolutely anything. But in that moment, at that time, I thought they were talking about me. And that was like the biggest boost I've ever received in running. I thought they thought I was doing something insane. And so I wanted to deliver. And somehow I just got this, unlocked this new source of fuel, and I just absolutely bolted it. I was 15 seconds below the target time, so 1 hour 19:45, and I attribute it to that experience. So that's our personal story, but there are countless examples of this happening in the professional context too. I got this story from Matt Fitzgerald's How Bad Do You Want It, which is an excellent book on sports psychology if you're interested in that. But essentially it's about Thomas Volker, who is a French cyclist who in the 2004 Tour de France completely blew away expectations. Average cyclist by elite standards, obviously an incredible cyclist, but compared to the likes of Lance Armstrong and such, average. But then in one of the time trials early on in the tournament, he just blew away from the pack and ended the day with the yellow jersey, which essentially means that he was leading the Tour de France for that moment. That was incredible in and of itself, but then the French media, French social media, and everyone else started to pay attention. They started showering him with praise, and suddenly he felt the same feeling that I described at the start. He was getting all these compliments, and he wanted to deliver on that and be the person that they set him up to be. So he actually managed to just keep on going and retain the yellow jacket for another handful of stages. I can't remember exactly how many, but essentially he used all of that praise from the French media, French social media, to bridge the gap between what his brain would let him do and what his body was actually capable of doing. And he managed to go way beyond what he thought he could ever do. And he did the same again in the later Tour de France, which is just an incredible example, one of many incredible examples of elites using this tool to be better athletes. I've got to do a run. I'll be back soon. Craigie. Always forget how hard it is running on terrain like this. So, what Volker and myself had experienced is called the audience effect. Essentially, that's a social phenomenon which is explored in various studies, which essentially says that once the spotlight is on you, once you've got an audience paying attention to what you're doing, you psychologically become better at that thing. So in the case of running or cycling, people are paying attention, your perceived rate of effort actually diminishes. So you can feel that you can cycle or run longer and harder, and you actually will be able to do so because your brain's letting you. Your brain wants you to be able to deliver on the expectations of the audience. Myself, I'm wondering, is that because of some sort of evolutionary desire to, we're social creatures. If you're out not in the pack, then that kind of was a death sentence back in the days of hunter-gatherer societies. Is this desire to push harder to impress part of our evolutionary need to survive and be part of the pack? I wonder. That's just me speculating. I can't give you any scientific literature to back that up, but it's an interesting discussion nonetheless. So yeah, essentially this is a scientific phenomenon that says if you are being watched doing the thing that you are doing, your perceived rate of effort decreases, and that in turn actually makes the effort easier, which is just insane. And so with that in mind, there are a few things that you can do to essentially hack this tool and make it so that in every run, in every training block, you're leveraging your ego, so to speak, by leveraging the audience effect, which will make everything easier, to make your training easier, to make the race easier and increase your performance. Before we get into that, there's one big caveat that I want to say here, and it's about the notion of ego, because ego can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. In general, it's got negative connotations, because ego can mean arrogant, it can mean egotistical, vain, and that's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about being arrogant, and I'm certainly not talking about being vain. So I'm not talking about getting amazing photos for Instagram and looking your best, making sure your hair is done before you go on a run, whatever. I'm not talking about that. In fact, if you're racing at max effort, you're probably going to look more like this, or like this, or like this. And as you've just seen, those are not pretty images. You're not going to look your best, but you're going to perform your best. So it's more of an ego from the perspective of performance. And again, that's not an excuse to be a dickhead. You can still leverage ego, try to acknowledge that you are doing well at something and appreciate the praise without being arrogant. So anyway, with that caveat out the way, here are some practical tips that you can use to leverage ego and leverage the audience effect. All right, that was harder than expected. Getting back into running is not an easy thing. Anyway, practical tips. The first tip is to line any race that you do with as many friends and family as possible. The fact that they're there, spurring you on at any point in the race, will encourage you to go faster. It'll be that little boost that helps you to eke out as much from your body as possible. And I can speak from experience, the feeling of knowing that someone's at the end is very encouraging. Imagine you are lagging towards the end of the race and no one was there. You've got no one to hold you to account. But if you've told them your time and when you're going to finish, and you're not quite going to make it, you're going to rush. You're going to really get that last bit of energy out to try and make it to fulfill your end of the bargain, so to speak. The second thing goes kind of hand in hand with this, and it's to choose races that have got lots of spectators. So I've already spoke about the Great North Run before, the World Marathon Majors. These are the biggest events in the world, and they are aligned with random people who are going to shout your name as you go past, and that's a massive boost. Just having spectators there is incredible. Whenever I do a race and there are little sections with spectators, I always look at my pace, and I've always run a little bit faster than I had at any other point in the race. Those are where the peaks are. If you have that throughout the entire race, it's a buzz like no other. So choose big races, like I said, the Great North Run, World Marathon Majors, and so on. that are going to be lined with lots of spectators. So the third tip is to use social media, but to use it wisely. I'm not talking about going on to Facebook or Instagram and just straight up bragging about all of the things that you've done, but I am suggesting to use Instagram to brag about the things that you've done, in a sense. So if we look at my Instagram, for example, and we're going to my profile, essentially what I'm posting on here is any big event that I've done, any race that I've done, and I'm just talking about the results that I got in that race and talking about the experience and so on, and just sharing the stories that happen as I go. I'm not bragging as such, but I am acknowledging the fact that I've achieved something. And I think doing that and sharing that and having people acknowledge that you've achieved something is going to spur you on more. And it's certainly a delicate fine line between being, braggy and showing off and being fake even, and just, acknowledging your achievements. In the same vein, I think that when you're using these social media platforms, you also need to acknowledge the bad times, but I'll talk about that in a second. So that's Instagram. I know it's a bit egotistical, but that's the point. I'm using ego in this case as a tool. Social media can be a bit toxic. The likes of TikTok and Facebook and sharing all of these fake narratives around your life and stuff, I don't think that's healthy. This is something that, yes, you're using your ego, but you're using it to boost your performance, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. In the same vein, I also recommend you get Strava. So Strava is essentially a platform to share your runs in other sports and get statistics about it, like your heart rate data, the distance, and so on. But it's also a social media platform where you can go on, give people kudos, see how they've done, and kind of compare yourself in a healthy way. It's certainly got drawbacks. Some people come off this platform because of the pressure and the comparison and feeling that they're not doing enough and stuff. But if you can, put that aside and get a little bit of a buzz from the fact that people are seeing what you're doing and giving you kudos and leaving comments and encouraging you, then it's another great way to kind of leverage your ego a little bit. So I just want to share a little warning before I close off this video, and that is that you should not let ego define you. Don't let it go too far. I think it's useful to use social media and friends coming to the run and so on as a little bit of a tool, using ego in that sense as a little bit of a tool to give you that little extra psychological boost. So when people give you kudos on Strava and comment on your runs, or like your Instagram post about running, it encourages you to stay consistent and to just push that little bit harder, and that's a good thing in my books. But if you start living a lie through there and you expect everything to be great while you're running because you've built up this narrative on social media, then I think you're using it wrong. I think we need to share things that go well, but I also think we need to talk about when things go wrong. When I've had a bad race, I'll always share a little debrief on Strava to explain what I think went wrong. And that's also helpful because you get some encouragement about how you can improve and stuff. You're not trying to create this facade that you're some sort of iron human being. You want to just share an authentic story. And when you're doing well, you'll get encouragement. And when you're not doing well, you'll also get encouragement. But don't feel like you need to live up to a certain expectation because you've shared it on social media. You can also share the bad times. And I think that's very important in this day where we have this very filtered, very synthetic social media presence from most people online. So just want to close with that thought. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a comment in the description. Give it a like and please subscribe to the channel. That would mean a lot. We've just started doing these videos and it'd be great to get some feedback. And if you want to see another way that you can improve your speed, I recommend watching this video, which is all about the 80-20 rule, which is about running slow to run fast.